What is up, everybody, and welcome to a weekend edition of the All-NBA Show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Marc Stein of the Stein Line and, of course, of DLLS Mavs on the All-City Network, the international man of mystery himself, across the pond. It's Marc Stein. How you doing?
Apologies to all of our faithful viewers, listeners, fans, chatters. This is not going to win a production Emmy. I know I know I look very strange. I'm in an antiquated old hotel in my beloved city of Manchester. Lighting, plugs in the walls are a bit scarce. I know it's never a pretty picture when I'm in that other screen, but like I'm on a couch sitting sideways. I don't even have a chair to use, but enough whining from the old man. I will try to make up for the lack of aesthetics with some decent commentary for you.
Always will. I will say it just adds to the mystique, man. I mean, this is what we love about you. Always traveling the globe, doing various things. And I love this. You get a peek inside the hotel room with a soccer ball. I like to imagine you just practicing your soccer.
You can see the soccer ball. I'm such a child. I'm still such a child, Adam, that is a plastic soccer ball with a logo of an old magazine I used to read as a kid. And do I kick it around the room? Because I'm like a kid who's traveling with his parents' credit card. No comment. Maybe I do. Maybe that does happen.
This is the content people want, man. They want to see it. Of course, Mark, huge soccer fan, out on a little pilgrimage out to England here, catching some soccer games. But before you get out, you have to get a little break because the trade market is heating up and it'll only heat up from here. We got a lot to get to. We're going to talk about a variety of trades that have happened or will be happening here shortly. And we're going to start with the one that did happen. I know people around the league are talking about the Trae Young trade, which from my perspective was Trae Young, this all-star player, guy that led his team to the conference finals a handful of years back, basically salary dumped. I mean, you get CJ McCollum, but you would think a superstar player a couple years ago, you think that's first round picks. It's another star, whatever. CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert. What are people saying about this trade? How has it been received around the league?
You laid out there pretty well what the public reaction is, what the media reaction is. I've actually been surprised within the league when you talk to people around the league about it, they're applauding what the Hawks have done. And you have to say, Ansi Salah, the Hawks' new GM, has been on a very good run. They got Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker signed to contracts that look very good. Jalen Johnson has been a monster. This is his team now. They traded for Porzingis. They seized an opportunity there, and Porzingis obviously has struggled to get on the court because he's still battling that illness from last season. But they've made a number of very good moves in the Ansi Salah era. And yeah, when you talk to other teams, they're like, hat tip to the Hawks that they didn't have to throw any draft compensation into this trade to convince Washington to take on the extra year on Trae Young's contract. And you think, hat tips? Like, Trae Young was the face of this franchise.
Yeah, this is crazy to me.
Like, Trae Young, if we're going to talk about beloved Atlanta Hawks, I think only Dominique Wilkins has him beat. I don't like to speak for fan bases. I'd rather hear that from Hawks fans to be sure. But, I have a real soft spot having covered Dominique's trade from the Hawks to the Clippers 10 days into my beat writing life. And I think outside of Dominique, Trae Young is as beloved as any Hawk they've ever had. And for him to just, like you said, be salary dumped on the outside world, that does shock us. And again, like there was a lot of thought that the Hawks might have to throw a first in here because next season Trae Young has a player option that's almost $50 million, and getting off that player option gives Atlanta a lot of flexibility. So there was a thought that, are the Hawks going to have to throw a first in here? Are the Hawks going to have to throw maybe a second or two in here? And they were able to do it completely without draft capital. So, but yeah, I mean, let's not forget the Hawks could have drafted Luka Doncic. They're on that list of teams that could have drafted Luka, and instead they traded the number 3 pick down to Dallas for 5 and a future first, Trae Young, and a pick that became Cam Reddish. And now both of them are out the door, and Trae Young brings back an expiring contract in CJ McCollum and a good role player in Corey Kispert, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I got to follow up there. But first of all, we got to make a movie or something of your first year on the job. Because I think this is like the 4th or 5th time you've mentioned that was my first week on the job and something crazy happened. So you had the most eventful, I don't know what happened, but your first like weeks on the job must have been the most eventful ever.
I am an incurable nostalgist. So because it happened to me, because I lived through it, it means more. But I actually do have a story planned looking back at that trade, because that was a crazy trade at the time. I mean, people don't really remember unless you're of a certain age. The Hawks, this was the year Michael Jordan was playing baseball, and the Hawks were leading the East when, without warning, they sent Dominique to the Clippers.
Wow.
That was a stunner in 1994, I promise you.
Well, it's a good one. We'll have to talk about it another time, because it is a history. I did not realize that context, and that context already has me intrigued. But I want to get back to this Hawks team, because to your point, they went on this horrible slide over the last month because they were an interesting team. They had a lot of hype coming into the year. They've got a bunch of players that I think are very intriguing, but they went on this awful slide, and it felt to me like, okay, the Trae thing, it must be hovering over the organization, over the team. But now that he's gone, now that the dust is settling on this trade, I look at it and say, yes, they do have flexibility. They do get some players in now that can contribute to winning basketball right now for this year and write it out. But I'm more intrigued by what they could possibly be doing next and where this team is headed. What does this trade signal around the league about what the Hawks are expecting to do? And, if people are applauding the move, it must mean that they're set up for some flexibility here coming up.
Yeah, I mean, look, they have the optionality now to trade for a big salary, and there's been a lot of talk about the Hawks and Anthony Davis, and there was no way Atlanta was trading for Anthony Davis if Trae Young was still on the books. Right. And I will say this, I didn't know that the Hawks would be able to move Trae Young as quickly as they did. I didn't think that was going to be an early January move. So the initial thought was, surely now the Hawks are going to put the full court press here and go after Anthony Davis. But of course, now Anthony Davis suffers the hand injury. He's out indefinitely for Dallas. But look, even before Davis got hurt, there has been a lot of pushback emanating from Atlanta. The Hawks behind the scenes have been insisting that they were not willing to trade Zachary Risachet in a deal for Anthony Davis, even before this Davis injury. So without Risachet and without clarity about what kind of picks Atlanta was willing to give up. Now, Atlanta does have the expiring contracts of Kristaps Porzingis and Luke Kennard, so that gets them a good way into range for a player like Anthony Davis, but they don't have to make a move in season. The Hawks are going to take that flexibility with them into the offseason if they want it. And yeah, I think we have to see what the next big swing they take is. But the best thing going for the Hawks is, they've got Johnson, Daniels, Alexander Walker, all playing at a high level, all on very good contracts. And so they definitely have to address the front court. And look, the Hawks in the summer, the Hawks were a darling in terms of when people were making lists of teams that had great off seasons. The Hawks were on pretty much everybody's list. So we'll see what the next step is. But it was clear, look, the Hawks' new regime did not draft Trae Young. They've put their own stamp on things. They've taken this team into a different direction, and more changes are coming. But also, it's interesting, Quinn Snyder, a very highly rated coach, he was brought to Atlanta to be the guy who maximizes Trae Young, and now Trae Young's not there.
Well, still a great coach, to your point, and lots of young talent. And now you get to coach Jalen Johnson, who to me is one of the premier young players in the NBA. And I think anybody would enjoy coaching that guy, the way he plays, the upside, and all the talent. They still are one of the most exciting teams. Let me ask you this. This trade happened a month before the trade deadline. You just said they don't have to do anything. They can get to the summer, now that this deal is out. But was any of the motivation of getting the deal done when it got done in the first week or shortly after the first week of the year? Was there any motivation that allowed them time to pursue another move here in the coming weeks?
I mean, for sure it does. For sure they will relish the thought that they have 25 days before the deadline to explore stuff. But also, look, was pretty much the last thing I did on U.S. soil last Monday when I reported that Washington had emerged as a legitimate, real deal landing spot for Trae Young. I think at some level, the Hawks wouldn't have minded it taking a little bit more time just to see if anybody else emerged, to see if any better offers came. But I think deep down they knew that no better offers were coming. This really was, Toronto did express some interest in Trae Young, but it became clear pretty quickly, and I think to the Hawks as much as anyone, that Washington was the only destination. And once it gets out that the face of the franchise could well be traded, obviously Trae Young's camp did not want this to linger. Trae Young at that point wants the trade to go through as quickly as possible. And, it leaked out Wednesday night that the sides had a deal, took till Friday to make it official, but now it's done. And we'll see. The Hawks do certainly have optionality to make another move, and we'll just have to see if they do or roll this into May, June, and July.
Well, I think the Hawks are going to land on their feet whichever way it goes. As you mentioned, they have made some good moves, and I just love their team, love their young core. We'll see what they do. But the other side of this is equally as interesting because Washington is a team that now adds Trae Young. He can be, I believe, extension eligible now, and I have to imagine that was part of why Trae Young's camp let it out that he would like to be there. What is their place in this? Where are they going with all their young players and now adding such a loud piece in Trae Young? If Trae Young's on your team, most of your identity is set because of the way he plays, in my opinion. So where are they going with this?
I actually find Washington's end of this to be far easier to explain and understand because the Wizards have done a lot of losing.
Yes.
They've got a lot of young players, but they don't have playmaking.
Yeah.
There's no life in that building. And Trae Young, and also next season, this summer, they were looking at 80-ish million in cap space. They're not a destination. How on earth are they going to spend all that? So in the worst case scenario, you bring in Trae Young. He gives you some sizzle. He ensures next season you'll hit the salary floor with much greater ease. He fills a void. And if the worst thing is that this thing ends after a year and a half, you've created some buzz, you've used your cap space in an efficient way, you've tried to liven things up while your young guys are still finding themselves, learning themselves. Maybe if you get really lucky, it's a Chris Paul to Oklahoma City, Fred VanVleet to Houston kind of repeat. But then what if it hits? What if Trae Young plays great as a Wizard? What if he clicks with Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George and some of their other guys? Like what if it just goes well? And so to me, from Washington's perspective, what was the downside? There really wasn't a downside. They certainly didn't have to. Now they didn't get any picks. I think if there's any disappointment here, if you're a Wizards fan, it's that they didn't at least get a couple seconds for taking on Trae's money. Because even I'm telling you, even though Trae Young only has one more year on his deal, around the league, Everyone is expecting him to opt into that. Taking $49 million onto your books in today's NBA is no small thing. They did the Hawks a great service that opens up all this flexibility. So for Atlanta, I can see why rival teams would say, that's great for Atlanta that they were able to do it without having to give up any draft capital. But for Washington, really the question here is Washington has to lose right now.
Right.
Washington and Utah, their pick in the June draft is top 8 protected. So the only way you can ensure you're in the top 8, you have to have the 4th worst record in the league. That's as low as you can go before you will not slip out of the top 8. There's a lot of bad teams in this league playing a lot of bad basketball, and it is not easy to assure that you will have the 4th worst record in today's NBA. And if you think we've seen tanking in this first half, just wait till we come back from the All-Star break and what we're going to see. Because the team where I live, Dallas, they need to lose. The Pacers are trying to lose because they don't have Halliburton all year, and they would love to get a great pick to slot into the Halliburton-led Pacers of next season. The Pelicans have 9 wins entering tonight's play. Like, there are so many teams. Sacramento, I mean, we go on and on and on. To see who actually ends up in the top 8 is going to be theater in itself.
Well, right now, you said, what do they have to lose? And that was what I was going to say, is their draft positioning. Because right now, Sacramento, behind them in the standings, New Orleans, and the Pacers. Then it goes Washington. But right after that's the Brooklyn Nets, who have one more win. They're basically one game ahead of Washington in the standings. And Trae Young, to me, might be the difference. I mean, that's a guy that can make the difference.
I refer you to the Raptors of Toronto last season.
Okay.
Who traded for Brandon Ingram.
Yeah.
Extended Brandon Ingram within days of trading for him. Trivia time. Do you know how many minutes Brandon Ingram played as a Raptor last season?
I know it wasn't many.
It was 0.
0. So I was going to say.
He played 0. He didn't log a single second.
And now he's playing great. So it was like it paid off. The long view paid off.
And the point is, other teams will raise issues about this, and the Wizards will say, well, Trae Young showed up with a knee issue and a calf issue. We've got to be safe here. Nobody said anything about the Raptors not playing Brandon Ingram, acquiring him with an ankle injury. So I don't think we're going to see Trae Young a ton here in the second half of the season. And that's one of the things, too. Like, they were starting to win games with CJ McCollum, who's heading for free agency, and he needs a contract.
It's so early, though.
I think again, I wouldn't rush to the airport to fly to the nation's capital because you want to see Trae Young play a Wizards home game. I don't know how soon that's going to happen.
All right. Well, I want to take a break here because I want to get to Ja Morant and other trade buzz. Everything's starting to pick up now in earnest because we're only a couple weeks away. So why don't we take
good? I need to stretch off this couch that won't let me sit properly.
Oh, there you go. You get your stretches in.
Let's take a break.
All right, sounds good. You get your stretches in. We'll take a break. We'll be back with Ja Morant and more trade talk. Fast breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite player will go higher or lower on stats like points, rebounds, steals, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. They've also got Pick'em and Champions. Pick'em. To play Pick'em or Champions, simply select a minimum of 2 players from opposing teams. Deal reveal. Select a player out of the 9 offered on which to have a discount applied. The discount amount is randomized and varies between uses. Champions is a peer-to-peer fantasy sports contest in which participants create a roster of 2 to 8 athletes. Upon submission, participants are entered into a tournament with other participants. Correct selections earn the participant champions points. The entry with the most champions points wins. The final amount participants win depends on how they perform relative to other participants in the tournament. Pretty cool little new product they've got there. Download the app today and use promo code ALLNBA to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code ALLNBA. Underdog. Make picks. Win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/playing it terms_DFS. _.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgamblinghelp.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. What kind of dreams did you have when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? Or maybe what did you want to make of 2026? Maybe you've been sitting on a business idea or a side hustle idea, something you want to sell. Well, you got to get with Shopify. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Shopify even powers the All City merch store, some great merch up on the All City merch store. Shopify has got you covered with website creation, product descriptions, email and social media marketing, and more. They also have AI tools designed to help you maximize sales. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/allcity. That's shopify.com/allcity. All right, back here, segment 2 of the weekend edition of the All NBA Show. I'm with Marc Stein. We're getting all the news from behind the scenes in the NBA. Now we turn our attention to Ja Morant, who seems like maybe the next domino to fall. What's the latest you're hearing around the league on Ja Morant, Mark?
Well, it's interesting that the Grizzlies made it so loudly known, so suddenly known that they're willing to take calls on him because they had generally been resistant to that. But I think the reality when you take a step back, I know on my Substack, which Jake Fisher contributes to twice a week, like we've been reporting about Trae Young and LaMelo Ball and Ja Morant and the possibility of these guys being traded since before Thanksgiving. Now, can the Grizzlies expect to do better than the Hawks did? The early word is that the Grizzlies are hoping for at least one first if they trade Ja Morant. Is there a team out there that's going to furnish a first after Trae Young essentially went for an expiring and a role player? We'll see. And it's interesting. The real reason that I'm in England, even though, yes, there is a lot of soccer watching,
yeah,
buying soccer toys,
yeah,
pretending I'm a Brit, all this stuff. The Grizzlies and the Magic are coming to Europe. They play a game in Germany on Thursday. They play in London a week from tonight. I'll be at that game. So I will be fascinated to just see what the vibe is like around the Grizzlies. They were hoping, like they made the Bane trade and they got 4 firsts and a swap for Desmond Bane. I mean, and they're hoping for 1 first for Ja Morant. Not It tells you that small guards, no matter how electric, if they're not known for playing defense, and if they're not known for availability, the market's going to be limited. So I mean, look, again, I'm confessing a confession that you already know. I don't really need to say it, but you already know it. The thought of an NBA game in a country I love to visit for soccer reasons, there was no way I was missing it.
Easy sell.
There's an NBA game a week from today in London. Next January, there's an NBA game in Manchester where I am now. Yes, I hope I am there for that as well. So I would be excited about it no matter what. But the Magic have had a very up and down season with high expectations. Orlando, not unlike Atlanta, a team that had what everybody thought was a really strong offseason, and they've just had injury after injury after injury and cannot get their team on the court to see it in full. And the Grizzlies, if you bring up injuries, are saying hold my beer, because the Grizzlies constantly have injury woes. Zach Edey was playing so well and had the setback with the ankle. The Grizzlies said today that Zach Edey is going to travel on this European trip, but obviously isn't going to play. But Ja Morant's face is going to be on all the posters over here, and he's not playing right now. They're saying it's because of a quad contusion, but the question has to be asked: is Ja Morant not playing because the Grizzlies have essentially elected to keep him shelved until they can find a move for him? It's funny, though. I think if we rewind to the Thanksgiving range, you would have said it's going to be really hard to come up with a market for Trae Young or Ja Morant. But then once it gets this public, it kind of makes you believe the Grizzlies must have confidence that they can move him now. It's just so out there. It would be hard for February 5th to come with no Ja Morant deal, and then they all have to move forward together. So, I don't know that this trade season. Well, I do know this trade season cannot compare to what we saw a year ago, because last year was the craziest trade deadline you will ever see. Obviously, Luka Doncic, that trade is in a class by itself. But even after Luka, we had Jimmy Butler, Zach LaVine, and De'Aaron Fox in the same trade, Brandon Ingram. I don't know that we can expect. I don't know how close we're going to get to that. But the fact that Trae Young has already been traded and Ja Morant is being openly discussed,
that's two.
I would say that's a lot. That's a lot going on.
That's two for this early, for sure. Let me ask you one thing you said there, though, about the first-round picks, Desmond Bane commanding 4. Has that market also changed? Maybe, obviously, these are special circumstances. Ja Morant, Trae Young, they're special circumstances. But are the days of 5, 6, 9 picks being traded for superstars gone as teams adjust?
No. I mean, I don't think you can blanket say it's gone, because we've seen recent examples for the right player, for, Desmond Bane. Orlando's a very conservative team, generally speaking.
Right.
And they thought that Desmond Bane, a two-way player, an accomplished three-point shooter, they were willing to put multiple firsts on the table. But what we are seeing is, it doesn't matter if you're an all-star, even an all-star who sells tickets. I think, Trae Young and Ja Morant are in that they're on the very short list of players who they sell seats. Wherever they go, they're going to be popular and sell tickets. But even that's not enough. Like, if you're going to make max money, it behooves you to be a two-way player who can make an impact at both ends, or else, like, that's really what's changing. That, like, you asked me about Trae Young getting an extension. I think an extension is possible in Washington, but it's not going to be a max extension. Trae Young's going to have to be comfortable with a number less than what he's used to if he wants an extension. And, we'll see. Again, I'm very eager to see just the mood around the Grizzlies with this Ja, assuming Ja doesn't get traded before they get to Europe here. Again, they play Thursday, and the teams play Thursday in Germany, then Sunday in London. But, even Tomas Isolo, his coaching style, the mass substitutions and the way he's tried to play, coming to the Grizzlies from Paris basketball, and now he's coaching in the NBA. I mean, it's crazy that this team in Paris can claim that its last 2 head coaches are both NBA head coaches now. Isolo and Splitter. They were the head coach of this team in Paris. And so the other thing, selfishly for me, the NBA Europe talk, obviously Adam Silver, I would assume, is going to be on this trip. So there's going to be a lot to monitor. It's going to be a newsy week in Europe on top of the ongoing trade watch that we're all mesmerized by.
Well, that's a nice teaser, obviously, for the Stein line, as well as for the next upcoming episode here in a couple of weeks when we have you back on, as the trade deadline will be even closer. But as we get out of here, just let me ask you this. What are some of the names, or what are some of the things you're hearing about this trade deadline? Michael Porter Jr. is one person I've heard a lot. Yeah, obviously, a lot of rumors.
That's the one. That's really the one.
It's just him.
It's not that it's just him, but that is, his situation is getting very interesting. And I'm not just saying that because I know you're obsessed with him as a former Nugget. I mean,
I wouldn't say obsessed, but yes, I'm intrigued.
I would say obsessed.
Okay.
Look, there is a lot of there. Like this weekend, John Hollinger, my good friend, former ESPN teammate. Of course, he's now at The Athletic, but he spent 7 years in an NBA front office. He reported Saturday that a source he trusted described it as a lock that Michael Porter Jr. is going to be traded. And I just have to put my hands up and say, when I've checked on it, I've been getting pushback that the Nets, more people that I speak to than not, keep telling me the Nets would rather not trade him now, as hot as he is, to wait till the offseason, see how they do in the lottery, and then make a decision. But if John is quoting someone who told him that, it's not, John's John is not prone to throwing stuff out there. Like that's not his way. So for him to report that really gets my attention. And you know, I've heard it too. I've talked to people who really believe that the Nets are going to sell high and move MPJ when he is. I mean, I expect him to be an all-star the way he's played, and with the Nets being more competitive than expected. But again, when I've checked on it and when I've asked what I would say is the best placed sources I could ask, I'm hearing pushback. So I guess all of that is my way of saying I can't call it. Like we're 25 days out. And I can't, I don't know for sure if MPJ is in play. And look, you understand why. I mean, the guy's not, he's shooting lights out. I mean, he's playing so well. And it's so interesting how the Nuggets felt like they had to get off his contract to break that money into pieces to bring in 3 or 4 guys. But now that he's close to the end of the deal in this NBA, his numbers not seen as unreasonable the way he's producing right now. So I really find the Michael Porter Jr. trades landscape to be a pretty interesting topic.
I can't imagine there aren't a bunch of contending teams that are interested in him. You get a shooter of that quality who can put up 9 threes a game and be efficient with them. He doesn't need a ton of daylight. To me, I think there's a lot of teams. The question is just, can you absorb the contract? There are teams that can, and there are a handful out there, including contenders. To me, I just can't imagine not pulling the trigger on him. Denver was not in position. They needed the flexibility. They needed depth. But there are teams that already have that might be able to sacrifice it. So I think he's going to be an impact player if he is traded here at this deadline. And from my vantage point, I can't imagine why he wouldn't have maximum value at this moment, but we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Mark, any other final thoughts before we let you get back to kicking the soccer ball around the hotel room?
All I can say is, well, I guess we're not doing this next Sunday because I'm going to be tied up with this game.
Yeah.
If some sort of emergency happens, or if we have to do this before I come home, somehow, some way, I promise to get the lighting and resolution. I am relocating to London, so I have to think that my amenities will be a little more modern. But if we don't connect this coming week, then I'll be back to the home base, and that's not pretty either. But at least it's a clear picture.
Hey man, enjoy your time out there. Have a lot of fun. Get the inside scoop, because as you mentioned, I'm very curious about the NBA Europe, and this is certainly a week. I imagine there'll be some conversation about that, questions asked and everything else. So
100%.
I cannot wait till we connect again. Enjoy your time out there. Everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed this, like Mark said, we do it every single weekend. We get the inside scoop around the NBA, and it's always a lot of stuff to think about and to chew on. We also have Legs back on Monday, Wednesday, Jason Timp on Friday. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hit the like button on the way out. See you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.